Hello, everyone. It's Tuesday again, which means that we're doing some live streaming. And with me today is my friend and colleague, David. David, how's life?
Hey, not bad. How's it going?
Well, pretty good. We are going to do some live coding today around the app framework. And David is an expert on the app framework. So we're going to see what we're going to build. If you have questions on what we should build, how the app framework works, or anything else, you can just drop them in the chat. But before we get started, what we want to do is we want to share some resources and some things that you can check out if you want to. So first of all, if you're curious on where you can find resources or videos or tutorials and all things developers, you can check out our developer portal, which is at contentful.com/developers. And if you want to interact with David, myself, or our colleague Shai, or other community members, you can check out our Slack, which is at contentful.com/Slack. Then over the last few weeks and months, we were all into GraphQL. So we published a GraphQL course that you can find under ctfl.io, which is short for Contentful /learn GraphQL. And then if you build something, we always love it when the community and when people share things that they build with us. So you can submit a project at ctfl.io/GraphQL swag. So if you let us know what you build with our GraphQL API, you can get some swag. And last but not least, we always made it through it. October 29th, Contentful is running, or we are running, our first Contentful customer conference, which is called Fast Forward. David and I are part of it. We are already very excited to hang out with you all. And with this, I think that we can get started. What do you think, David?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all these kind of things. And I think as we decided to go onto the app framework today, or have the app framework as the topic, I think the first question, David, really is, so what's the app framework?
Yeah, so the app framework is the evolution of what developers can do to integrate with Contentful. So, those of you that are familiar, we've had UI extensions in the past. The app framework acts a lot like UI extensions, but it has a lot of, more powerful features. And one of them that I want to touch upon is the configuration screen, which allows you to configure apps per environment. So you can actually have like different environments. So if you have like your staging environment or your preview environment, you can configure your apps separately. And you don't have to, people don't have to like mess around with JSON or anything like that. So you as a developer can make your app configurable using a nice UI. Like if you want to use Forma 36, for example, the design library that we offer, open source, you can do that. So I think that's really cool. So that's like one of the main features of the app framework. And there's a bunch of other things too.
All right, you started strong here, David. You already dropped a lot of bombs. So
yeah.
Let's get into the details. So you mentioned Forma 36. So what's Forma 36?
Yeah, so this is the design language that Contentful uses. So when you go into Contentful's, web software, the thing that you use every day, the editors use, all of the buttons and the inputs and, where you put your text and all that stuff, all the interactions, they're built using this design library, which is a bunch of React components. And nice. We offer this to you for free out of the box. So out of the box, as you can see, like you just write in the markdown here or the markup. And you get all these components. They come with all of their styling. They come with all the animations, if there's animations attached to them, like the slide downs and all that stuff.
Got it. So basically this is there. So the app framework is there to extend the Contentful interface, and Forma 36 helps us to get the Contentful look and feel.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you build all the UI. Like if you want to go fully with the Contentful tools, you build the UI using Forma 36. You use the app framework with the SDK to get all your business logic in there. So it's kind of like this composition of all these different tools that helps you build these deep integrations into the Contentful space.
Right. Got it. So, and when we just dig around a little bit, so the app framework is there to extend the interface. And in which places can I put some custom UI?
Yeah, so actually over on the left bar there, you mind just clicking on app locations? So what we call app locations is the place where all the places where the user interface can be extended. And just to give a bit of context, these places, your app runs as a single page application. So it's just like a basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript thing going on. That's somewhere you have a URL to it. And what we do is we load that in an iframe inside of Contentful. So that's kind of, what's going on under the hood. So it's nothing too fancy, but we do give you like the JavaScript SDK, and we give you all this stuff to integrate very deeply with the web experience. So you can actually interact with our main website. You can navigate and pull up content and all that stuff. So these locations here are all the places where the iframe goes into. And like the app configuration screen, like I mentioned, is where your configuration happens. You've got a full page location that can hook into the main navigation bar. There's going to be the dialog location. This is good for like if you want to pop up metadata or anything like that.
Yeah, I could see that there's a little button which is like kind of, I don't know, open auto-completion or open something that you want to fetch from a third party, where you could just open up a modal or something.
Yeah, that's usually what we use it for. Like when we've got some of the document or the asset management apps, they basically have a button, you click it and you see your like asset library.
Right.
Yeah, so you can actually customize the entire entry editor if you want. So if you don't like what Contentful gives you in terms of the editor experience, you can customize it. We've done that in the Optimizely app. I've seen, a few people, they've really gone crazy with it. They have like all of these integrated third-party things going on. It's really cool, I think.
So let's have a look what is Optimizely. Let's have a look how it looks. So we're here, this one, I guess.
Yeah, so the Optimizely app is pretty cool. I actually personally worked on this one. What it does is it takes over the editor experience, and it lets you choose two different entries to run an experiment on. Like in this case, just in the example, there's like variation 1 and variation 2. And what you can do is when you've got this set up with your backend, like the thing that renders the content in Contentful, it will be this special content type that tells you like, hey, here are the two variations. You need to call Optimizely, and Optimizely has all of this in their documentation. You need to call Optimizely, tell me which one should this user specifically see, and you've got it all right there. So it's like super simple for your editors in Contentful to set up an experiment. And then the developers, they just need to build the experimentation logic once, and then it will just work for any new experiment you run.
Got it. So what we see here in the screenshot, we're not going to install this right now, but this is Forma 36 components to an extent. And I see that we have some analytics here coming from Optimizely, which is then third-party data. And for the people that are not familiar with Optimizely, so Optimizely is basically like a client-side A/B testing tool. Is that right? Is that still the case? I used Optimizely 10 years ago.
Yeah, they've really branched out. They do offer a lot of stuff. I'm not super familiar with all of the offerings they have, but you can definitely run experiments like across all of your systems. I think they do back-end stuff now as well. But yeah, in our case, it's like it's your classic like A/B tests, or you can have multiple tests running. So that's really
red
cool.
or green button. That's it, right? And then see what the people click. Yeah,
that's the prime example. Yeah, and then so just to finish it off, we've got the entry field location and also the sidebar location. So the entry field is, it's just like the area where you would put in content, and then the sidebar is just your general area if you want to know more metadata or something about the current entry, that goes there. So those are the places in the web app where you can have your app running. And of course, we do offer the ability to run a backend web app, which is like if you want to be a little bit more programmatic and listen to webhooks or other kinds of events, you can work on Contentful data asynchronously and programmatically in that sense.
That is future, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from what we've got so far,
maybe Davey's sneak peeks here right now.
Yeah, I think it's we've seen already people building pretty powerful things with this stuff. And in the future, what I want to do some things on is showing how we can actually get UI extensions, kind of that older version of the apps, the UI extensions. We can actually put them into the app framework. So we've built it for like this backwards compatibility mode. And we encourage people to go into the app framework because it has all of this like extra stuff. And we think it's super helpful. And yeah, hopefully we can maybe in the future show some of that.
Cool. Sounds good. So before we answer our first questions, how is the best way to get started with building on Contentful's app framework?
Yeah, so the easiest way is we actually offer a tool called the Create Contentful app. And what that is it's a wrapper around the Create React app. So this all uses React. And again, the reason we use React is because we've got the Forma 36 library. And so you get all the support for it out of the box. We fix all the bugs and add all the features and all that stuff. You're free to use whatever you want, right? Like I said, it's a single page application, so you can go ahead and use vanilla JavaScript. You can go ahead and use Vue, whatever library framework you're using, you can do. If you feel comfortable using React, or if you're, really good at it, you run this command right here. You've got a full directory of everything you need, basically. And then from there, you can add your third-party scripts. You can add your business logic. So this would be my recommendation, is to just go with the tools that we have, because it gets you right to the point of being able to build the custom thing.
Right. Yeah. And also you get Forma, right? Which is, for me, it's these kind of two things. It's a directory structure. We will have a look at that in just a few minutes, because I did that just before we started the stream here. So I ran npx Contentful create Contentful app. And for me, it's just this combination of the already defined folder structure that sets everything up for me, speeds up development so quickly. And then it's the set of React components, because in the best case, I really don't want to write custom CSS that is basically the same as the Contentful UI. So, but we're going to check that out in just a moment. And we have our first question. So Alexander asked, first of all, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat wherever it is and where you're watching. And we're going to answer these in line. And I'm going to read it out for David, and then we can maybe see how we can tackle that. So in case you're doing QA, we're doing it right now. How would you share state between views, like, for example, the entry editor view and the sidebar view?
Yeah, so this one, we can actually easily do this, but it does depend on, first of all, what kind of state management you're using. So in our case, we can show an example in React, but to give a general idea is because this is a single page application, your application is going to handle the logic for one location and another location. So in this case, it's the entry editor and the sidebar view. But you can imagine that both of those locations can have like a parent component or a parent wrapper logic around them, which means that when you do something in one of them, you can actually transfer the data to the other location via, if you pass props via React, or if you update state in like a different framework. That's how you would do it. I know it might be easier to see like a solid example, but that's kind of the general abstract way that you would do it. So it's definitely possible. But again, you have to remember, if you want to transfer data between two views, it's a single page application. So it has to be loaded in the two views at the same time. You can't like have transfer of information from one view and then you go into like a totally different page and load a different view. In that case, you're going to have to save data either to a third party or to Contentful, or you're going to have to find a way to save data. You can do it like on local storage or something like this. So those are also other options. If you want to maintain state, but you don't want it to be super permanent, you can do local storage or even session storage. And what those things are is those are just browser APIs that allow you to store data inside of the user's browser. Just like you can store like stringified JSON in there.
Are you up for that, David? I think the local storage actually has an on-change handler, right? So what we could just do is we could have an input field that is not persisting anything in Contentful, but just we could have two views and could. What do you think about that?
Yeah. If you want to do that, and if you want to even get the open source editors into the mix, that's another thing we didn't really touch upon. I don't know if you want to do that too. We can either use.
I love
we can
that.
use Forma,
awesome.
like Forma has the inputs, or we can use like a fully done editor if you want as well.
Cool. So, Alexander, thanks for the question. And unless you have something else on mind, then what we're going to build, we're going to go for two locations that sync some random stuff from A to B. Sounds good, David?
That sounds good.
I assume that's going to work.
We can only assume.
Let's see. So what I did beforehand is what you see here is VS Code. And this is exactly the result of Create Contentful app. And maybe, David, you can walk me and all the others through the folder structure and all the files that come with the bootstrapped experience here.
Yeah, definitely. So in the browser tree there on the left side, you can see it's a pretty normal directory structure. You've got your source directory, and even outside that, it's just a normal npm. So you've got the package, JSON, the README. So you're free to edit those things as you wish. We do install, like in the dependencies, we install like all the Forma 36 stuff. So you get that out of the box. But you can also install third parties if you want, like if you want Lodash or something like that, you can go ahead and do it. So this file here, the index.tsx, we're using TypeScript because, I mean, when we use VS Code, for example, it just makes things a lot easier. I personally like the typings, especially coming from like a, kind of a C# background. I also like that stuff, but you're free to use just plain JavaScript.
I didn't know that you have C# background.
Yeah, I did a little bit of C#.
How did we talk about that?
I did a little bit back in the day. So of course these Microsoft products I'm a little more familiar with, but yeah, I mean, you can use plain JavaScript here. We're not, there's no reason why you need to use TypeScript other than, if you like it personally or if you find that it's super useful. And in this case, I find it super useful.
Right.
So what this file is doing is this is the base of your component. And what it does is it talks with the Contentful web software. So it talks with the Contentful web app. And the Contentful web app basically does all the bootstrapping. And then it says like, hey, we see that you want to load a UI extension, or you want to load, in this case, an app into the view. So it calls, it calls all of the registering functions and all that. That's kind of all done behind the scenes. But if you scroll up kind of to the top of this file, there is an init function that we call. It's on line 26 there.
Right.
So the init function is super important. This gets done for you, so you don't have to really worry about it. But if you're going to do it from scratch, you'd add that in, and you'd add your callback. And inside the callback is where you do all of your like render logic. So that's what we've got going on in here.
This is what kicks it off, right? Without it, you won't see anything in Contentful.
Exactly. So if you don't have this init function, you can expect to have a blank screen or some kind of error.
Yeah, I don't like blank screens. Cool. And then we have these, right?
Yeah, so these are typings. Those you wouldn't normally import, but we're importing those here for typing reasons. And again, it's just going to give you like all those nice pop-down menus that show you what options are available to you.
Cool.
These, what you've got highlighted here, these are the important bits. So these are all the components. And as you can see, we've tried to do our best naming the components also to line up with the locations that the app can show up in. So I think for today, we'll probably be using a field component, right? Well,
let's do field and sidebar just because
I think a field and sidebar. It will be so Alexander said entry, editor, view, and sidebar, but we'll just do a field instead. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just a little easier. So we'll do a field and sidebar. But all of those components are already set up. So like you can go ahead and start building stuff in any of the locations if you want. And from line 32 onward, this is kind of like router logic. So depending on what location you're loading in the web app, it will figure it out for you. So you actually don't really need to touch any of this
file,
code.
Right? I've never touched this file, to be honest. All I do is I bootstrap always a new application, and then I went into the components, and then I just kick it off to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the majority case. You really, when you start to customize files like that, that's when you really have like custom advanced stuff going on. And that's, I mean, it's up to you to figure out like how you want to structure that.
Right, that makes sense. So cool. So to start the whole thing, so what I did initially was really I ran npx contentful create contentful app, which bootstraps everything here, and I will stay in VS Code, and I'm just going to start this npm start command. So this now, this is a big terminal.
I can see it.
Yeah, you can see it good. So what we're going to do now is that this starts a web server on localhost 3000, which we're going to bring into Contentful. So how do we do this, David?
Yeah, so did you create an app definition? Do you know what an app definition is? Do you want me to explain?
I know, but I guess that not everybody listening knows what an app definition is.
Okay, so an app definition is very important because that's what's going to get you started with building apps. So you need to be like a developer or an admin of an organization. So not just a space, an organization. So up in the left corner there, yeah. If you open the organization settings all the way at the bottom, and then up in the top bar, there's an apps menu. Yep. So click that. And this is where all of your private app definitions are. And what an app definition does, as we'll see in a second, is it explains where the app goes, where the URL is for the single page application, what the name of the app is, and all the locations that we want the app to show up in. So what we can do is create a new app definition by just hitting the create app up at the top right. And yeah, let's name, I don't know, sync all the things. Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
And like you mentioned, we'll want to use localhost 3000 because that's where we're running it currently. We don't necessarily need an app configuration screen because I don't think we'll have any configuration. We're going to do everything in the code right now. If we wanted to, change things in the future, we could add one in, but it's not required.
So the app configuration screen, what do you use it usually for? Like it is for all the different apps that I install, or what is the difference here between the definition and an installation? I think we should talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, I think that part can be a little bit confusing, but once you work with this thing, you'll start to understand what this stuff means. So right now we're defining what an app can do. We're not installing it. We're not doing anything like that. We're literally just like, it's kind of like a development phase where we say like, this is what we want our app to do and how we want it to function. And once we have kind of that template, then we can install that into our spaces and actually have the app run and do the things that we said it should do. So the definition here is defining what the app does. It's not installing or anything like that. It's just an outline, basically.
Gotcha. Cool. So let's go for...
So you'll need so we want entry field and we want entry sidebar. And you'll see for the entry field, we actually need to select, we need to do some more selecting there because we are going to...
Let's go for the editor then, because
I think the entry field will actually be a little bit easier. So all we need to do, if you go back to the entry field, we just need to select short text.
Got it.
And,
cool. And what are these?
Yeah, so this is new. It's new, but in the sense of it's new for apps. So for UI extensions, we used to have these things called instance parameters, which meant you could configure so like let's say you have a field and that's kind of your UI extension. You can configure each field to have specific configurations or options. So like let's say you wanted a specific color per field per content type, you could do that. So we're adding that in here, but actually the ability to do that was always present in the apps. It was just through installation parameters, which is a whole different topic. We found that we actually like the installation parameters because it allowed you to make this stuff on the configuration screen, and you could make like your own, you can make your own UI to build how you wanted this. The instance parameters are accessible only through Contentful's. I mean, they're currently only accessible through Contentful's UI. So it's not something you build custom, for example. But in the future, that might change. So for now, and we can take a look at that maybe later if we happen to pass by it. But anyways, why don't we create this app?
Let's do this. So this now created a definition. Which is valid across the organization.
That's right. Yep. And what you've got highlighted is the definition ID, which is useful if you want to programmatically manage this definition. So everything we just did is actually done through the API because Contentful is API first. And so we stick by those principles. This whole screen is built using the public API. So we're not really doing anything that, people wouldn't have access to in general.
So you would maybe have an API flow when you have a complex app setup and you maybe want to create apps on scale or prepare some new orgs or something like that goes into the direction of automation.
Yeah, that could do it. Or if you, for some reason, need to programmatically change locations or something like that.
Right.
To be honest, there might not be great use cases right now for it, but we decided that because that functionality is there, you can think of the use cases yourself. So we didn't want to limit you in that regard.
I always prefer API first, right? Because you never know when you have to write a script to get stuff in or out. You never know.
Yeah,
exactly. I just wrote the script today.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time. Well, I guess it depends on how
advanced
the script is.
Yeah, I was just hacking away. I will not share the code that I've written, but it worked. It exported as CSV. So should we hit the blue button? What do you think?
Yeah, we can do that. So we can go straight from here. We can install it to a space. So if you want to pick the space you want, and just make sure you've got the right environment selected there. So yeah, it looks like that's it.
Okay.
Cool. So it's warning you that you're in localhost mode, which is totally normal for this one. When you go to production, you'd obviously host this app somewhere, and it would be in a publicly accessible URL, or I guess privately accessible if you're behind a VPN. You can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
In our case, there's no configuration required, but this would be the screen where the configuration would show up before you install the app. So since we don't have any, you can just hit install up at the top right corner.
This is something that people have to remember. I always think when I enter this screen here that we're done. But basically what we are here we're at the installation dialog into a space, right? So we have still to hit this button.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, doing that now. Ready? Cool. Boom. What happened?
Yeah, so you're installed. I think just to give people an idea of what's going on here. So if you click apps and then you go to manage apps, this takes us to the in-app marketplace. So it's that same marketplace you were showing a little bit earlier. That was our marketing marketplace. It's just fancier design. This is the in-app marketplace. And as you can see, here under the installed section, we've got that sync all the things app. And available to us is all the other private app definitions for this org down below. And then below that is all the public apps that you could install with our, third-party integrations.
Right. So this is basically all the things that we're playing around in our organization and all the dummy apps that we set up.
Yeah, pretty much. Cool. And again, these are accessible throughout the organization. So any space you want, you can put it into any space.
Right. So, and we defined, what did we do? We defined sidebar and field, right?
Yes.
So we go here.
Yeah, so I think
I reused the space from Amelia. So Amelia had a space full of dog toys.
All right, perfect.
Let's have a look. So how would I enable my app now?
Yeah, so as you'll remember, so what we're going to do is we're going to have that entry input. There's going to be like a text field and then also a sidebar. Mm-hmm. So let's think about, we want a short text one. So maybe the toy name would be a good one. Mm-hmm. We can do that. So in the settings, and if you go to appearance, all the way there on the right, there it is. There's our app.
I have to celebrate our app title here. It's beautiful.
It's messing with our UX.
All right. So this will mean that the fields will be rendered by our iframe.
Yes. So the toy name field is no longer going to be that default input box. It's going to be whatever we tell it, which we'll give it an input box.
Cool.
So that's one
check
thing.
If that works?
Yeah, you can hit save, but actually, since we're in here already, we can save some time. If you want to go to the sidebar as well, we can edit the sidebar of this thing, and it looks like available items up at the top there is the sync all the things app. So let's go ahead and click that plus button as well, and that will add it to the sidebar of this content type as well. And you have to hit save as well.
Yeah, let's just open an entry to kind of show what we're actually seeing in the configuration here. So when we're opening an entry, you see all these different components. And when I got this right, is that I really can mess and move and reorder things. Is that what I see here?
Yeah. So the sidebar can be reordered if you want to put things at the top. If you want to remove things, I know, like some people remove the publish button, for example, because they want to have like a lot of control. I guess you could create your own custom publish button that has custom logic. People have done that too. But I mean, there's like a plethora of things you can do with the custom apps, and if you want to remove the default functionality.
Cool. So we have now sync all the things as the first thing. Let's keep the publish button, huh?
Yeah,
so we're gonna hit save.
That might be useful.
Not getting too fancy here. So what we're gonna do? So theoretically, when we now refresh this, did you see it already? It was
already working because we got the hot refresh going.
Cool. So we have two components here now.
Yeah, so these are the ones that come just right out of the box with the Create Contentful app. So not very useful. I guess they're good for checking to see that it worked. But really, we want to probably spend the time now to create these, custom components. So the first thing is you want to work on the entry field.
Yeah, which I have open here, and it supports, right? I'm still amazed by this all the time. Let's see.
Yeah,
Hot
so
reloading in Contentful.
It's great because in real time you can see when you messed up and all the bugs you have.
Yeah, that's nice. So what is the game plan? Do we want to bring in, how would we sync things from A to B? What do you think? How should we approach that?
So I think the easiest way to do this would be to just use a Forma 36 text input box. And what we'll do is we're going to give that an on-change handler. So as you type in the value to that text input box, we can also kind of hook into that life cycle and edit our local storage on the fly. That might be the most succinct way to get things updating.
So what I opened is I opened up the documentation for Forma, which is at f36.contentful.com, and I grabbed this thing here is what we're looking for, I guess, huh?
Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, a simple copy and paste from the docs should do it, although you will need to import it as well up at the top.
Yeah, so let's have a look. And as we're dealing TypeScript, I should do T, E, boom.
Yep, done.
Nice. So let's have a look. Let's go back here. So I'm going to hit save. And when we're having a look, hoppa!
There it is.
Is this us already?
Yeah, so it looks like we've got some, there it is, yeah.
Let's clean that one up. And what you're saying that this probably has something like on-change available, right?
Yeah, so we need to add an on-change handler, and we'll also need to do something with the value as well. So on-change equals, and then the curly brackets.
Here. Yeah. Wait, I'm a little bit off here. So what we want to do is basically, this. Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
What we could now do is we open the console, and then we should already see some logging going, huh?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. So React calls them synthetic events. If we want to see the
all
actual
fake,
thing,
it's all fake in React.
It's all in
the cloud. Fair enough.
So if we want to do it, I think event.target.value will give us our specific value.
Right. Let's see what's up. Event.target. Oh.
Why don't you log target? And it's possible it's just a TypeScript thing that we've got going on. So that looks like to be the actual input, and my guess is the value should exist. So let's do value for now. And since it's yelling at us, we can just quickly ignore it. So above this line, do a comment and at ts ignore. Yeah. Let's see if that just kind of.
I feel I'm still getting used to TypeScript because sometimes it feels very cumbersome to do things because you have to be very accurate all the time. So there's no middle ground. Either you do it 100% or not.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure what we need to basically type the event that you've got on line 17. We don't need to do it now, but it's, you would have to define it and then it wouldn't yell at you anymore. That's basically what's going on here.
Cool. So let me just add some help tags, provide something and sync it to the sidebar. So I would assume what we could do now is that we could just do something like local storage. Oh no, we should check if the value is coming down first.
Yeah.
Looks good.
So there it is. So now, if you open up the local storage docs, you just need to add that value into local storage. So it's going to, off the top of my head, it's probably like window.localstorage.add item or something like this.
I think it's window local storage set item.
Set item, yep.
Sync. And then we're going to go with this value here, right?
Yep.
Oh, I love this example. I think it's super fun. So
Yeah, you're
let's
gonna have
get
to
rid of
add.
it.
Yeah.
So let's just clean that up so that it's on this massive font size, easy to read. Or it's not. Oh, do I have to place that here? Okay. So with this, we should now be able to not see any log messages, but we can go, oh, there's new stuff. This is new. Oh, not going into that
I think that's
now.
React tools, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, so that's going to check your component tree. And you
Ah,
also, the profile is really cool. I've used that in the past. It helps you check, your performance if you're rendering or re-rendering too much.
but not today. So what we can
Not
do
today.
here is we can go to local storage and we can go to localhost. And here we see syncy sync.
There
So
you
what we
go.
now do is, nice.
So we've got pretty much a live update in a local database called local storage here. And what we can do is, because, like I said, because the sidebar is also hosted on localhost, it will have access to the localhost 3000 local storage. So the sidebar
Right.
can read this syncy sync value.
Cool. So what we probably should do initially is that we should get this value out. What do you think? So what we maybe want to do is have something like const value, which is local window, local storage, get item. How did syncy sync? Something like this to have it on refresh and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Value is assigned but never used. So let's place it inside of this React component, and this should do the trick, huh?
It's going to yell at you because I think it's saying that the value potentially can be undefined. So what you can do is just, if you want to do an or statement. Yeah.
Sweet. So this now means that when we go here and we delete this, so local storage, to my knowledge, is persistent, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Local
let's see-
storage will save it until it gets deleted and cleared. Session storage is when you close, the browser.
I've never really used session storage for anything, to be honest. But here we have our hello world, which comes from here. And now when we only interact with it once, we have this entry, which means that when we now refresh, it should have hello, David. Cool.
Nice.
So now it's time for syncing, huh?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, it looks like local storage has that on change. Yeah, it's got the event listener. So you should be able to just copy and paste that code. And let's go over to the sidebar component.
On here, I'm going to do sidebar. Theoretically, what we should do here is now some hooks action, huh?
If we want, I think, yeah, we'll need to have we'll need to have a state that gets updated. That way the component knows to re-render itself.
Yeah.
If you want to just do it like on refresh to be like, just to see that it's working, we can also do that.
Yeah, we could do that initially, but in my experience, when you have hot reloading and stuff, it just becomes very messy very quickly when you don't have proper state managements, because with every hot refresh, for example, it just attaches new event listeners. So what do we got here? So we have this event listener. We can just log it out first and see if this the syncing actually works, and then see how it works.
Yeah, try it.
So what we want to do is on storage, and we don't want to parse anything because we only have. And then we want to do. I should have made this as a constant probably. So syncy sync. Window looks good to you?
That looks good.
Let's save that one. So when we now go to dental chew, so it should have updated.
And there you go.
Look at this. Look at, oh, this is beautiful. I like that.
But that logging is coming from the sidebar, so it's not anymore from your field location.
Right. So what is happening is that we're updating this input field, which writes to local storage, and we have it then here reacting to this writing to the local storage, and we're logging it from there.
Right. So now it's just a matter of hooking up some React state to make it render inside the component.
Cool. So what we can do is use effect, use state, huh?
Yep.
Then what we would have to do is first, I guess that we would have to bring use effect, because we want to add a side effect and attach some listeners.
Yeah, we should. I mean, the listener that you've got, we really should probably put into a use effect. That way, it renders it latches on when we actually render the sidebar component.
Yeah.
So basically,
So
I would take your code from line 9 to 13 and just put that in there. Yeah.
like this. So for the people that are not familiar with use effect and use state, it is incredibly hard to explain. I found that already. So in a React world, what we're dealing with here is a functional component. So this is really everything that you throw in gets the same result. It's really just a function that returns some components and some JSX. The thing though is there are two things to the story. So you can use something like useState, which works like this. So you can give it a certain state and that returns an array that returns something like, what do we call it? Message and set message. So basically a getter and a setter. But the problem here is that this will trigger a re-render of this one function because you have to re-render things. So you have to always use these kind of useState, useEffect function to trigger all these loops that happen. And I've been in a few endless loops very often because when you call set something, it will re-render something. And when you then call set something again, you're just doing...
Get Stack Overflow.
You get nice, exactly. So what we can do here is that we have the useEffect hook and we're adding our attach listener, and then we could do set message.
Yeah, so this would be the appropriate place. So every time we get a new event from the storage thing, we'll set the item. Yes, so that will be the message.
What is it complaining about? Let's do our trick again. Cool. And then theoretically, what we could do is we could log the message, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so just, basic React syntax there, yeah.
Yeah, you ready? Do you think it works?
Let's hope so. I think so. There we go.
This is so... I love that. That's super cool.
And it honestly, so that wasn't really hard to get working. And as you can see, we just had like most of this was already set up for us. We were just messing around with like the business logic of it. And if we weren't joking around, this would have taken like 2 minutes less maybe to like implement. So that's what I really like. Like when I go to build new apps, that's why I'm using like the create contentful thing, because I just look at that. It's like super fast.
I think there are two things to this story. So I'm not sure if Alexander is still around. So there would be another option, right? So what we do right now is that we're syncing stuff via local storage, but we could have this input field right as a contentful field, right? We could write to this field, and could we then have an on-change handler for these kind of things here, or would that be complicated? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's also possible. I'm actually not too familiar with the on-change handler, but from the sidebar, you can obviously access any entry in Contentful. And specifically, we understand that you're in a current entry when you're in the sidebar, so you don't have to go crazy, finding the entry from the API or something like this. So you would want to access the current content type and get the fields for that content type. I think this is if you're in an entry field. I'm not sure if we'll have access. The nice thing about TypeScript is it's going to tell us if we have access to the entry portion in the SDK when you're in the sidebar location. It's possible we don't. But you can try it out. So in the field location, we definitely have access to it, and we can check when something was set and when something changed.
So what we could do here probably is, so we have SDK available from here, right? So it should be, and then you're saying that I could just type away, right?
Yeah. It will tell you what you have access to.
So basically something like this, right?
Yes. So that would set the value. And that's pretty typical. You'll see this kind of code in most apps, in most Contentful apps. This is how you generically set the value and have it actually save inside of Contentful.
So that's
did you get rid of the local storage logic? We're not going to use that anymore, right? So we're just going to set this inside of Contentful.
Yeah. So I think it's important for the audience that there are two things here, right? Either you want to sync stuff from one location to the other that shouldn't be persisted in. I'm not sure what the use case here would be, right? But that shouldn't go into Contentful itself. Then we could do something with local storage because we're not putting it into a field or into an entry. But I would assume that most of the time syncing things via fields is probably the thing that you want to do. How do you feel about that, David?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. One example I can think of is if you've got like a translation app, for example, and you have specific fields that maybe aren't filled in, or you can tell based off of the locale of the fields that it's empty, then you can have a sidebar app that warns you to say like, hey, not all of the translations are complete. So that would be like a good use case for figuring out in the sidebar at a quick glance without having to scroll through the entire, entry to see if there's still stuff that's missing.
Right. What I did already is I went to the sidebar, and basically we could now flip the whole thing towards using on change or something, right?
Yeah, so here's where I was a little unsure, but we can use TypeScript to help us out. So in here, if you go into the entry and you're going to have to access the fields, you'll have to know the specific field ID of this one.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's usually like by default, it's just going to be, just by default, it's going to be the camel case of what the name is, but it's always good to check. And then from here, you'll most likely need to get,
look at this.
Yeah, the on value changed.
Let's log that out first.
Yeah, let's do it.
And this is convention when you deal JavaScript. So this is a basic callback. I've written this code probably 1,000 times in my life. Maybe I don't know how often you have written this. So let's have a look. So it compiles with warnings, which is fine. But theoretically, when we now go back and we're going to our entry, so let's have a look. So and we need the console. And we do, I love that. Oh man, I love that. It's so cool.
So yeah, this is perfect. So it is working just the same way that the other one worked. So you could obviously get the value if you want the initial value to show up, but then as you type it, you just do set message like we did before.
Right. So this is now already, sweet. And we have 3 exclamation points. I think that is good.
Yeah, and as you'll notice under the publish button, now that we're using the SDK to set the value, you'll notice that the automatic save is working.
Right. So Alexander, I hope this answers your question here. So there are the 2 ways: the hacky solution for things that you don't want to, that you don't quote us here. Please don't quote us. The hacky solution if you don't want to persist data, and usually what we think you want to do is sync via the on value change callbacks. So, but let me just try something. So when I open this now in a completely different window, it should still work, right? So when we, how do we do this? So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to have this one to the left. So we have here our sidebar, same entry, different window. Working? Huh.
This one might take a second or two just because
here we go.
The autosave has to fire. But yeah, that worked.
Right. So you're saying that basically when you're in the same window, on value change is snappy. But if you're cross window, you're relying on the autosave hook to fire.
That's right. Yep. So other editors will still get the live update. Like if there's multiple people in the same thing, it just will be a little bit slower because autosave has to send data to Contentful, and then Contentful has to re-render that data.
Got it. Cool. So we have 12 minutes left. What do you think should we do next?
Well, if you want, we could check out the page location.
Let's check out the page location, which we don't have yet.
Right. So we're gonna have to add that actually into the app definition.
All right, so we're gonna take a shortcut here.
Yeah, that was actually a good shortcut.
And then we enable page.
Yeah, so this is hopefully, for those of you that have been following, this is hopefully a better illustration of what the app definition does, because as you can see, we need to modify it in order to add more locations. Like we already created it, but then later on we can actually modify it. And what you're doing here is you're saying, you know, I want this to show up in the main navigation. The link path, I don't think we should play around with that right now because that's more of an advanced feature. So if you change that, it means you are going to have to manually check the current directory structure in order to show stuff correctly. So it's possible, like what you can do is we've got an example where we hook it up with like React Router, for example. It does in-app browser redirect stuff. So if we just leave that as the default, then it just gives us our default page location.
Cool. So want to save it?
Yeah, let's save that.
And then we don't have to press that one, I assume, because we did that already.
Right, we're still installed. It's still installed. It's just now been updated. So we just need to go back to our space. The thing is with this one, sometimes there's some caching. So just refreshing the page will add it back into the main navigation. Like if you've just made this update, sometimes it doesn't pick it up right away. Okay, but
Sweet.
now it has.
Hello world.
So that's our page location.
So this is coming from this
We've got a page component. So here, what I was thinking was, one thing that I like using the page location for, and of course, again, this single page application, you can pull data from external sources. So literally, it's just a blank spot with the Contentful bar above, and you get access to deep link into Contentful. But you can do whatever you want here to an extent. So what I like to use this location for is usually an overview. So on the content page, you can have sorted views and you can filter and all that fun stuff with your entries. But sometimes you might want to show entries with a lot of custom metadata. Yeah, so here it's like you can save views, you can share views and all that stuff. And you can update the way this works. What we can do is we can actually rebuild this screen, but give it some custom functionality that maybe we want just on the page location, or maybe we want to limit functionality even. We want to just like have a place where editors can go and not have to mess around with filters and stuff. And it's just like there's some hard-coded filters that show us exactly the data we need.
Got it.
So I would say, like, before we do any filtering or anything like that, let's just think about how we want this page to look. And I think we can easily accomplish a table style thing by using Forma 36. So as you can see on line 2, you've already got Paragraph installed on Forma 36.
Yep.
We can add a couple more things. So Forma also offers a table. We can add a table in there if we want.
Here we go.
Yeah, so that's the table we use in Contentful, and you can see the markup's fairly straightforward, so we can just copy that in.
You're a big fan of that, aren't you?
I love the table.
Don't we all?
That's how I used to build websites.
I'm not that long around, so I didn't, only for emails I use tables.
Well, I think I feel like email technology is still very old. I don't know. I haven't worked on emails in a while, but
lucky you.
I don't really reminisce about those days that much.
I have deepest respect for people that do emails.
Yeah, it's a tricky business. And the ones that are done right actually look really good. So wow, look at that. That's already done.
Got it. Do you think we have 7 minutes left there? Do you think that we can make it to get something in there, or should we wrap it up?
It depends. So we can easily call the SDK if you want, and just to give a quick demonstration of how we would get data into here. We don't have to go crazy showing the data, but yeah, if we let's use like a use effect. And so when this component renders, we'll just make a quick SDK call to get all of the entries inside the space.
That's good. So we do
so access props.
Now what do we get?
So here, what we want to do is we want to work on the space level. So there's a space object, and inside there we've got all of our space methods. So in this case, just get entries would be the method name.
Yep.
And what this does is it returns a promise. So you can either use async await, or in our case, we can just do a dot then. And inside the promise, we're going to get our entry data back. So it's going to be a collection, which we do have typed out, so you will be able to see what gets returned. So if you console log data.items is going to be, well, you can just console log data, I guess. Items is all of our entries.
Here we go.
Yeah, so there's the array down there, and that should be all of our dog treat entries.
Got it.
So, from here, you can imagine, we don't necessarily need to do it, but from here, you basically save the items to state. And once you have them in state, you can iterate through them and build the table rows dynamically, and you can put any data you want inside of the table row.
I'm just pseudocoding here. We would have something like this here, right? We would have, entries, and then, hey, something like map, right? And then we would have this table row stuff in there, something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
With the data.
Yeah, with a table cell, and then you do like, entry.name, entry.field.locale, all that stuff.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. So for the audience, what we did is that we used a lot of TypeScript magic coming from Create Contentful app. This is where the overall documentation lives. So if you want to learn more, I think this is also a good starting point here. And apart from that, David, I think we made it. Should we do a wrap up and then plug some more resources? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
So what we did today is, oh shit, no, I broke everything. Let me just fix everything here. Oh no. So what we did here today, so Command Z is always your friend. Let's do this. Here we go, and let's just comment that out for a moment. So what we did today is that we created a new Contentful app that renders a in the page location. So we see here that it has its own navigation entry. We edited or we defined the app to also be available on a short text field, which you can do in the content model section under appearance. So you see that we have here our Sync All the Things app, and we added a sidebar location, which you see here too. And then we just sync two locations with two different ways. So as Alexander pointed out in the chat, we did a hacky solution for the way that if you don't want to persist data in Contentful. And we have the proper way, if you want to have an input field, you want to change this, and you maybe want to react to some changes of data or something, you can always get the field value and then react to it in a different location, because Contentful's SDK, the extension SDK here, provides the on-change handler if you need to. And with this, we have 3 minutes left to go, so let's just have a wrap up. So if you're looking for more videos, more tutorials, for more blog posts, or want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can go to contentful.com/developers. This is basically what Shai, myself, and David are building and hang out when we're plugging a lot of things there. If you want to hang out with us in real time, you can go to contentful.com/Slack. If you have questions or want to connect with other community members, that is a great way to do so. If you want to learn GraphQL and in a React setting, we also have this GraphQL React course available. Oh, we have a last question here. Let's plug that one in.
Sure. So now I'll just read it out. So now all kind of extensions rely on app framework as a feature set of extension API types. So I want to make it clear. So UI extensions still exist. They still work exactly the way they've always worked. What the app framework does is it builds upon that, and it allows you to create even more advanced things. You can migrate your UI extension into an app. It's not necessary, but we recommend it. So there's a bit of new functionality for apps that you will have to learn if you want to specifically use apps, but we're not gonna stop you from using UI extensions either if you want to continue to do that.
So I think the thing is that it's the same SDK for both, right?
That's true, and I think that is a bit of a point of confusion. So we should maybe tidy that up a little bit, but the SDK works exactly the same, and that's part of that backwards functionality that I was talking about before. So we just figured that by having the same SDK, you're already familiar with all the methods. You don't actually need to necessarily learn like something new in that regard.
Cool. I hope that helps, Diego. Maybe you can give us a thumbs up if that was all right. So, and that is that. If you build something with GraphQL, you can go to ctfl.io GraphQL swag. And we're very excited to have our first annual Contentful Customer Conference coming up, which is October 29, which is called Fast Forward. So you can go to ctfl.io fast forward if you want to learn more. David and I also might have a session there. So if you want to learn more about the app framework, please come by. And Diego, if you have any further questions, you can hit us up on Slack. We're happy to help here. And with this, thank you very much, David. That was a lot of fun. So I think if someone in the audience has any requests for apps or questions, I think that we could repeat this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. There might be other opportunities, like dive deeper into certain things. I really like this syncing back and forth. I think it's a use case that actually people have, but I don't know if we go into detail that much.
Cool. Yeah. So if anyone has questions, just drop us a message somewhere. And we're streaming on Tuesdays, 5 p.m. my time. What's your time?
This is like 11 o'clock my time, Eastern.
And everything will be available on YouTube, which you will find the description in the box below. So I hope you all have a great day, and we see you next week on Tuesday latest. Thank you, everybody.